This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Sahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwall podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 376 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about Borussia Dortmund keeping Champions League hope alive with a 2-0 win against VfL Wolfsburg. But can they also keep silverware hope alive by beating second Bundesliga side Holstein Kiel in the DFB Pokal semi-final? Question mark. We will see, but we will also preview that game. For all that and more, joins me Matthias Zug. Hello Matthias, how are you doing?
I'm doing quite well, Stefan. How are you today?
I am doing excellent. Thank you for asking. And I'm even more excited because we're recording this at 6 p.m. Eastern time, which means it's midnight in Germany, which means we're getting Lars Pollmann after dark. Hello, Lars. How are you doing?
Hello, Stefan. It's a bit like the Gremlins, so don't feed me after midnight or whatever that rule was.
Well, yeah, you are up because it's draft day, and as a Pets fan, I'm sure you're very excited to. I don't know. I'm not even gonna go there because I literally know nothing about what draft day is. I've seen the movie with Kevin Costner. That's all I can tell you. And apparently, as
then you know everything. It's not.
Okay, that's good to know too. So, before I digress into the whole Aaron Rodgers scenario, why don't we just dive into the 2-0 win against Wolfsburg?
Now Haaland getting in behind Brooks. Erling Haaland, just what Borussia Dortmund wanted, just what they needed, and Haaland gives the Schwarz-Gelben early energy. To take it away, Dahoud, and look at this, Erling Haaland stretches his legs, and Haaland, for the second time today, Erling Haaland, well, he can take a bow as far as all the Dortmund fans watching this are concerned. What a crucial goal that could be in the Champions League equation.
Yeah, obviously a clutch win. Dortmund with a 2-0 win and another clean sheet against Wolfsburg, if my calculations were right. I think that's the ninth straight or something crazy like that. Matthias, obviously, after being decimated to 10 men after Jude Bellingham got sent off in the 59th minute, even bigger that Dortmund got away with the result. Why was this game... how do I put this? I don't want to say less exciting because to me it was exciting, but why was this an easier win than I would have expected? Explain that to me.
Well, it comes down to Wolfsburg making a lot of mental errors. I feel...
Isn't it something we talked about on the pre-pod?
Yeah, I mean, we said if they commit a lot of mental errors, Dortmund's going to have an advantage. But it's not really something that they're known for, but they did show it against Frankfurt. You know, I mean, that was an error-riddled match from them, and they kind of showed it in this one. Now, you look at a lot of the statistics, and it looks like Wolfsburg were the clearly better side. And they had 21 shots to Dortmund's 8. The big difference is only 2 of those 21 shots were actually on target, whereas 4 of Dortmund's 8 were. And the other thing is, number 1 shot taker for Wolfsburg, Sava Schlager with 6. Then it was Maximilian Arnold with 3, Yannick Gerd with 3, and Paulo Ottavio with 2. So obviously, you can notice one key name that is not on that leading shot total list for Wolfsburg. And that's something we did talk about pre-pod or in the previous episode, was that if you can shut down the supply, and if you can shut down Maximilian Arnold, you can shut down Wout Weghorst. And Dortmund did exactly that. Their pressing was good where it needed to be. I thought Piszczek made a case for everybody going, where has he been all season long? Why hasn't he been starting? Because in my opinion, I mean, it's a very small sample size, but in a small sample size, he's probably Dortmund's best right back on the squad. And then even if you look at passes, you know, Stefan, I'm a fan of the killer stat that tells you why you're going to lose, and that's 27 Wolfsburg crosses versus Dortmund's 10. That just shows, once again, they were trying to feed Wout Weghorst, but really couldn't get there. And the other thing is, of the 21 shots, not a single shot was taken inside the 6-yard box. In fact, it was almost a 50-50 split between inside the area versus long shots, whereas Dortmund, I think, had 72% of their shots were within the area, so high percentage opportunities. And of course, Wolfsburg don't have Mahmoud Dahoud. So, you know, that says it all right there. But it really came down to very poor, well, I wouldn't say poor finishing, poor shot selection overall. Questionable positioning from Wolfsburg at times, and just their decision making was really not great.
Yeah, Lars, so what do you think it was that hindered Wolfsburg to play to their strengths? Because they are obviously defensively a very solid team, but then they passed the ball straight into Haaland's feet in what was it, like the 12th minute, and I think that ball was a little bit deflected to beat Castells. But I wasn't quite sure whether Dortmund were able to pull this sort of performance off, because they needed to play very maturely. But what do you think in particular Dortmund did make right to come up with the stats that Matthias just sort of rattled down?
Well, firstly, I think you could easily make the argument that it's at least partly down to the mental side for Wolfsburg now. I mean, you mentioned the 9 games in a row without a goal against Dortmund. The last time a Wolfsburg player scored against Dortmund, it was Daniel Didavi in, I think, September of 2016, which is like a crazy stat for a side that hasn't been relegated in that time span. And even in that game, Dortmund actually end up winning 5-1. So I think there's something to be said for that statistic somewhere deep down in the minds of some of these Wolfsburg players, especially a guy like Weghorst. Strikers we know are quite sensitive to these things, and he's never scored against Dortmund, obviously, with those stats. So I think that's one part. I think Matthias made a good point about just the mental errors and both misplacing passes, you know, playing in rather pointless crosses. Shot selection was an issue for them, certainly, but I think you can also attribute that in no small degree to the good work by the, let's say, middle block of Dortmund's defense, including, to an extent, Piszczek, as Matthias also mentioned. I thought, once again, Manuel Akanji, very solid performance, as has been the norm for a few weeks now. Didn't miss a beat without Mats Hummels. I think Emre Can had like one mistake where he gave away a corner fairly early in the game, and that was basically it. So he didn't really make any larger errors, which he's been known for over the last few weeks or months, even basically the entire season, if you're honest. Dahoud, once again, brilliant. Bellingham had a bit of an off day for his lofty standards for a 17-year-old. I think the sending off, kind of a bit of a coaching blunder by Terzic. I guess he wanted to keep him on because of the fifth booking anyways, because he's going to get some rest fairly soon. But I think that was pretty obvious opportunity to make a halftime substitution. But in the end, I think you could once again argue, which is this kind of age-old debate, that going down to 10 men maybe didn't help Dortmund necessarily in their performance, but it certainly didn't help Wolfsburg to have more possession against 10 men in numerous advantage. So ultimately, especially during the game, the German commentator anyway, I don't know obviously about the US or UK commentary, but the German commentator was going on and on about how Wolfsburg were playing well enough to earn a result. And I mean, as Matthias pointed out, they basically had no chances whatsoever. I mean, Paulo Ottavio snatched at that early volley-ish. I mean, that's why he's a left back and not an attacking player. And from then on, I think it was one of the more comfortable days in the office for Marvin Hitz. So I would say very much a mature performance by Dortmund, at least as much as Wolfsburg just didn't have a great day. And to be honest, Wolfsburg's great day seemed to have run out a bit, because if you look at their performance against Bayern was okay, but Kuhn Castells, who's a really solid goalkeeper, basically made 2 huge errors in that game. You already mentioned the Frankfurt game, so feels a bit like they're bullying up on smaller sides these days, but all the big games seem to go against them, and that's how they went from an 11-point advantage over Dortmund just like a month ago to 2 points, and it looking perhaps more likely than not that Dortmund might be able to get past them.
Yeah. I think I did make a joke about toothless wolves, also because I think Weghorst lost a tooth, or no, it was Brooks, I think, in a challenge with Meunier or something like that. Yeah, what obviously this is going to be the most revisionist take I'll give now, but I think that the sending off of Bellingham in a weird way did help Dortmund, because I think it sort of sharpened their minds that every player had to give a bit more to make up for that, to compensate for the lost man. And I think that actually did help Dortmund, and especially in the way they played, because they could sit on that 1-0 lead, and I think they were quite comfortable for Wolfsburg to sort of try to attack and not really find many ways to really threaten Dortmund. And obviously that pass by Dahoud was just outrageous. That's it's a dime if you have ever seen one. And if you have a player like Haaland who then has the legs to convert that into a goal, that's even better. I felt like maybe this is sort of the moment where the equalizer is coming, but nope. It was Dortmund making it 2-0, and then I was rather confident that they would actually see it through. Matthias, I think today is the first day where it really hit me that I actually felt a sense of sadness that yes, Lucas Piszczek is actually going to leave Borussia Dortmund, as he was, I think, quoted somewhere about talking about his next club in Poland, which is, I think, some lower division team where he will just, goof around a little bit, I guess. But I think having him back in the team really is a big boost for Dortmund, just like Sancho is on the other end, because he is very intelligent and knows when to step on the ball a little bit. I think he, even from the right back position, sometimes dictated Dortmund's rhythm a little bit and helped them not to run into attempt a counterattack out of every turnover. I think that really helped, and obviously he was not error prone in all the minutes we have seen him play. Obviously in his career and in the Dortmund shirt, he has been error prone from time to time, but right now he is doing really well. Do you think this is down to Terzic sort of doing a lot of things by trial and error, where he sort of burned through Meunier and Moret, because I think he wasn't too happy with Moret either, because he gave away a couple of situations that Terzic wasn't happy with, if I remember correctly from his news conferences. So what do you make of this late return to the season of Lucas Piszczek?
Yeah, I think it can be attributed to, let's try this, because obviously Lucas Piszczek, over the last 18 months prior to this short match run, even under Lucien Favre, really didn't get a look in anymore. I mean, it was always somebody else. I mean, before it was Hakimi, and then maybe he slotted in as the third center back in a back three. But other than that, he really wasn't looked at anymore as a reliable right back, for obvious reasons, his age and his pace and stuff like that. But what was shown with versus Moret and Meunier is just that Piszczek, and both of those players are not speed demons. I mean, that's the one thing. It's not like you're talking about Hakimi. I mean, I don't think, yes, probably Piszczek would lose a foot race against Meunier or Moret, but I'm not even 100% sure if that's the case. So if you're pretty close on pace, that's where the maturity, the positioning, honestly, the crossing, because, yeah, The other ones are not necessarily the greatest crossers, even though Meunier is not that bad. Moret, that's an area of the game he still needs to work on. And I think given the situation, given the importance of these matches, to have someone with his experience, his obvious ability still, and leadership qualities, especially when you're missing a Mats Hummels in the back four, can only benefit the team. And yeah, I think Terzic was like, okay, let's try him versus throwing Emre Can there, which obviously wasn't an option here with, the lack of players in central defense. And so I'm glad he did it, and I'm really happy it worked out, because obviously Lukas Piszczek is forever a Borussia Dortmund legend.
Yeah, Lars, if you want to chime in on Piszczek being back, be my guest, because I feel like it would be unbecoming as a host to not ask you.
Well, first of all, Piszczek is actually setting a Bundesliga all-time record, apparently. I mean, it's not like I fact-checked these things, but I think it was Opta tweeting out that he, having won all 9 Bundesliga games he was involved in this season, that's apparently a Bundesliga record. Seems kind of low to me, but then again, most of the time players don't only get involved in 9 matches for teams that win a lot. So that, I think, is more coincidence than, all down to an aging right back. Obviously, he's playing well right now. Terzic actually said today in the press conference that Piszczek had a number of physical issues, so maybe he wanted to bring him into the team a bit earlier than he was able to ultimately. I do think having a lot of downtime, if you like, this season probably helped keep Piszczek's legs fresh for this end part of the season. Personally, I think I'm a lot higher on Mateo Moret than most people seem to be, which, is fair enough. He still makes a lot of mistakes, but I definitely see the potential. And I think pretty much everyone is also in agreement that Thomas Meunier is not the answer. So to me, it would have been nice to see or good to gauge whether Piszczek would have had this kind of impact earlier in the season, but apparently that wasn't really an option. Still thinking that, he won't be able to play 270 more Bundesliga minutes, plus, if that so happens, 180 or more minutes in the cup. So you are still likely to see, I guess now Meunier is a bit ahead of Moret again. I mean, at least he came off the bench a few times. Maybe that's down just to size and his, in theory anyway, ability in the air. I mean, the only aerial duel I can remember is where he made John Brooks lose a teeth, as you said. But still, I mean, Piszczek, definitely a Dortmund legend, but I think people are a bit going a bit out of order by demanding basically that Dortmund sign into another contract extension. I think knowing that this is the end maybe pushes him to heights that perhaps he wouldn't be able to accomplish if he was still a major part of the squad.
Yeah, also maybe we're not used to seeing this sort of baseline that he can give, considering Thomas Meunier has been quite atrocious, and Moret. And I agree with you. I totally also see the potential, but there's also some inconsistency, obviously. And Piszczek, obviously, it's only a small sample size, and I don't want to jinx him because he has made some boneheaded passes into midfield too in the past. But Matthias, speaking of boneheadedness, here's a turnaround that I'm also very pleased about and quite honestly did not predict, and this is Gio Reyna, because when we talk about the mature performance against Wolfsburg, we obviously have to add him in there, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, his positioning and his discipline in terms of, tracking back and all these kinds of, sort of baseline boxes you need to tick, they were ticked. So what do you make of the resurgence back to form by Gio Reyna, who really looked quite out of sorts for quite a long time?
Well, I mean, I'm not quite ready to say he's back. because still a kid and, 2 matches a season not make. He definitely is playing better than he has been previously, and he's doing all the things right that he was rightfully criticized for before, including his body language. And before, there were so many times when the ball would be lost in the attacking third, and it's like he would just slump his shoulders and just kind of trot back.
Yeah,
and obviously
known as Pulisic syndrome.
Yes, Pulisic or Rafael Guerrero syndrome. I mean, it's the same thing, and I feel like Guerrero had that again, and now for the last few matches, I haven't seen that as an issue anymore. And those are key aspects because obviously if you're pressing and you want to press, but you also need some type of compactness, you can't have players on the wing not tracking back and leaving you completely isolated. So no, it's great to see it. Hopefully it continues for the rest of the season, and that's a confidence builder through the summer and into next season, because obviously the older he gets, the more mature he gets, the better he gets. Now, that wasn't necessarily the case with Christian Pulisic at Dortmund at the end, where I feel like his worst season was his last season. Gio Reyna, but his head was also somewhere completely different already at that point. I think Gio Reyna hopefully can add to that maturity, but there are still plenty of times, especially prior to the last 2 games, where he really looked and acted like a teenager out there. And that's something like, for instance, Jude Bellingham, even though there are moments of teenage petulance when things aren't going well, but that's more frustration. Jude Bellingham seems significantly more mature for longer stretches in a game than someone who's 1 or 2 years older than him. So it's just something to keep an eye on, that especially me as a U.S. men's national team fan, just kind of, I need to see a little bit more of that, because obviously when he plays for someone other than Borussia Dortmund, like the U.S. men's national team, you're never going to be the favorite and you're always going to be running behind. So it's just something I want to see more of. So we'll see how the next few matches go when it's really crunch time.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Dortmund sort of brought this upon themselves that right now already is crunch time. I mean, they are the only team, if I have this correct, that won all 3 games from the Englische Woche and thus kept themselves within the conversation. Obviously, Bayer Leverkusen did beat Eintracht Frankfurt, so that means we're now 1 point behind Frankfurt and 2 points behind Wolfsburg. If you look at the run-ins, Frankfurt do play against Mainz, then Schalke and Freiburg, and Wolfsburg play against Union Berlin, then Leipzig, and then Mainz, and Dortmund do play next Leipzig, then Mainz, then Leverkusen. So the common theme is that Mainz will, in one way or another, decide the Champions League fate of one of these 3 teams. Lars, obviously the theme of this Dortmund season is, as soon as I gain confidence and hope that they can do anything, they would just collapse in the most ridiculous way and have freak results. Do you think we are past this point now? Because it really is sort of on the deadline now. There's literally no room for error, and as a writer, I sort of respect that they are trying to fight it very late to the deadline. But in more honesty, if you look at these games, these 3 games left, with the cup competitions in between for Dortmund and Leipzig, I think, what do you make of Dortmund's chances to actually clinch the 4th or 3rd or whatever place it's going to be?
Well, do I think Dortmund's topsy-turviness is over? Absolutely not. I mean, we've seen too many games this season, and if we're honest, too many games over the last few years to just assume that because they've beaten a few teams in a row, none of which posed necessarily on the day anyway a major threat to them, and unless I'm completely blanking on something, I don't quite think so. So I think if we look at Dortmund's chances, I think they are more likely to be in Wolfsburg or Frankfurt having a couple of shocking results, because I definitely think Dortmund aren't going to win all 3 games. It's basically just looking at, the numbers and playing the odds. Dortmund's 4 wins in a row are already a season high, and I can't really predict any way that they will stretch that to 7 wins and maybe even 8 across competitions. That just doesn't seem. I guess the Man City games would be in between, but still, such a lengthy stretch of good results, if not always good performance, I just doesn't seem likely to me. So they probably need to hope that Wolfsburg, who seem, even though Frankfurt also lost against Leverkusen and against Gladbach beforehand, but still Wolfsburg to me seem a bit more brittle, and obviously Frankfurt have the freebie against Schalke, which basically eliminates one of the 3 opportunities. So I really think that Dortmund do have a chance, but mostly because I don't see Wolfsburg gaining, more than maybe 4 points. So 2 wins for Dortmund. I'm not even sure about the goal difference, but that might be enough.
Yeah, I mean, goal difference is important, and I said it before, Dortmund need to win by 2 goals, because that means they will have a better goal difference than Wolfsburg. Now, Matthias, obviously, I think it was Schmatke who said that when he looks at the run-in of Dortmund, then he's sort of doubting that they will make up those 2 points. First of all, is this a quote that you hang into the locker room? And second of all, do you think he's right?
Yeah. Oh, no. I think it's... I mean, Schmatke is known for just saying shit. I mean, that's kind of his thing. He just says things without really thinking about it too much. He may be a good sporting director, but sometimes he just says crap. And he's he's not an easy guy to work with. I mean, he's burned bridges pretty much everywhere he's worked. But that is definitely pin up in the locker room type of talk. As motivation. And then, it does add some pressure on Wolfsburg's coaching staff and players. Like, okay, don't screw this up. And if you look at the run-in, of course, theoretically, Dortmund have the harder schedule. Okay? But, you never know what Leverkusen's going to be. I mean, they're always good for conceding 3 just as much as they're good for scoring 5.
Well, if you want to play Leverkusen, it's on the final match day, because that's how you know that's usually where they mess up.
Correct, because odds are by then it'll be locked in that they're in the Europa League, or they're in the Europa Conference League? Europa League? I don't even know what 6th place is anymore these days. Either way, they're 6th. Because they probably won't be caught from below.
Well, who knows? They might have to play Dortmund for 5th place. So it can all happen.
No, but I just don't see that happening. I think the buffer between Dortmund and Leverkusen is big enough that there's not going to be much left for them to play at that point, but possibly everything for Dortmund. And that, obviously, look at Bayern. They've completely shut off, and they're playing like it. So that could happen with Leverkusen. Obviously, Mainz are going to be very difficult because they're still in that relegation fight, and Leipzig are very, very good. Granted, now they're also a little bit in flux with their coach leaving, which is kind of an interesting dynamic right now with a few of these teams around Dortmund. And if you then look at Wolfsburg, they have to play Union Berlin, which is going to be very, very difficult for them. A team that doesn't allow a ton of scoring opportunities against a team that doesn't score a lot of goals. So that could be a definite slip up. Mainz could be a slip up, and obviously Leipzig is one as well, because Nagelsmann will have taken a very close look at how Dortmund was able to do what they did and what Frankfurt did. So for Schmatke to say something that exceedingly overconfident and arrogant, I just think is not a smart look right now.
Yeah, Lars, you probably know this because I do not know, but when is the cup final scheduled? Because I know it's not after the Bundesliga has finished, so it must be in between maybe Dortmund's matches against Mainz and Leverkusen. Is that when it's happening?
It's May 13th, so the Thursday before the penultimate Bundesliga match day, if I'm not mistaken.
So maybe with that in mind, that's maybe what Schmatke meant. But either way, if I were in his shoes, I probably wouldn't have said that because what positive can come out of this other than jinxing your own side? But it's obviously very intriguing now, and it's good for us because we have A, something to talk about, and B, something still left to play for, and that's obviously always more exciting than being already that set in midfield, or your league campaign is already over because you already qualified and can't, you're already like in second place but can't get to first or something like that. So at least there's that. Now, Matthias, I think we can move on to the match against Holstein Kiel on Saturday. And right now we're in a situation where Kiel, after having had to quarantine due to some COVID-19 infections, now have to play sort of englische Wochen. Meanwhile, Dortmund had a whole week of rest, and you can talk about Kiel maybe being in rhythm or whatnot. What are you making of this matchup? Because it's obviously a cup semi-final, and I feel like that this is sort of the time where favorite teams like Dortmund do not really screw up anymore. What are you making of this? And when you talk, then I'll tell you who Kiel actually beat to get into the semi-final, minus obviously Bayern. Of course, that we all know, but I think that was in the third round already, or on the second round, which it
was pretty early.
Yeah,
it was pretty early. I want to say it was third round, but it could be
wrong.
No,
it was second round. I have it in front of me. Yeah, they won against Rielasing in the first round, then Bayern beating them on penalties, then beating Darmstadt on penalties, then having in the last round a rather comfortable 3-0 win against Rot-Weiß Essen. So there you go.
So basically, they only played a bunch of no-name teams.
Yeah,
including
Rielasing.
No, the thing for Kiel, it's interesting. We've got two teams playing against each other that have a lot to play for. I mean, Kiel have 3 matches in hand versus the 3 teams ahead of them in the table, and are only 2 points behind Hamburg, who once again dropped points today for promotion. So they are absolutely in the midst of a promotion and even potential direct automatic promotion to the Bundesliga race, which is huge. And they just played on Tuesday, I believe. Yeah, 1-1 draw against Nürnberg. So, they're going to be a little bit more tired. You could almost say that. Let's try to talk this. Let's try to talk Dortmund up by talking them down in terms of having some rest or not. Dortmund, I think, needed the rest. Kiel, I don't know. I mean, what their match load was in the last few weeks. I try to catch the Zweite Bundesliga games they show on ESPN Plus. They show 1 or 2 a week, but it's not always possible because it's like at 5 a.m, and that's just not always happening on the weekends. But Kiel are a team that I would not take lightly. I get kind of Union Berlin when they were in the second Bundesliga and played Dortmund in the Cup type vibes. Not saying Kiel are like Union Berlin, but in terms of this could be a really uncomfortable game for Dortmund if they're not careful, if they take it at all on the light shoulder. If they don't, if they take it as seriously as any key match as they should, then they really should beat Kiel relatively comfortably. But it's not. But if their mentality isn't right, then this could be a very uncomfortable day on Twitter for everybody.
Yeah, it's Matthias already saying he's going to lock off around the 70th minute. But yeah, in all seriousness, I think if Dortmund bring a mentality to this game like they sometimes show in the Champions League, then I think they will just walk all over Kiel. But that being said, I also did not watch a lot of Holstein Kiel this season, to be honest, because I don't really have the opportunity to watch Zweite Bundesliga. I did watch the Hamburg game just earlier today because that was on ESPN Plus, and it was not in the wee morning hours. So Lars, I think you are my best shot for some insight on this team. So what you got?
Well, it's possibly a Yellowwallpod first, but I'm actually happy to talk about a team I like watching that isn't Dortmund. Yeah, I mean, for work-related reasons, I've gone into the second Bundesliga a lot more over the last, let's say, 2 or 3 years. And to be honest, I can count on one hand the teams that are more fun to watch over this time in the second division, including teams that have been promoted, like Bielefeld, who were great in the second division, or Stuttgart, that were more fun than Holstein Kiel. It's not a side with a lot of huge names, even though there are some players people will know. For example, Finn Bartels, formerly of Werder Bremen, scored a couple of good goals against Dortmund in his time. They have, without a sliver of doubt in my mind, the singular best player in the second division in Lee Jae-sung. Great attacking midfielder from Korea. Definitely undermatched, if you like, in the second division. I mean, he could literally start for anyone in the Bundesliga outside Dortmund, Bayern, and Leipzig, in my opinion. And maybe he's not a great stylistic fit, but that's the kind of quality he has. I mean, I can't stress enough how good he is and how ridiculous it is that he's playing in the second division. And there were rumors that he was going to sign for Hoffenheim, which wouldn't have been good enough for him, in my opinion. And those rumors apparently false, and he's looking more to cash in with a transfer to England. He's not the youngest player anymore. Yeah, I mean, they churn out good coaches. People might know Tim Walter, who then had a failed spell at Stuttgart for his radical approach. His successor, Ole Werner, one of the youngest coaches in pro football in Germany. People might remember that I told Gladbach to sign him back when we had the Marco Rose emergency pot. That's how much I think of him. So I don't know that they are going to get promoted, because they've really been shafted quite a bit with this COVID situation. Obviously, Hamburg being shite obviously helps. So there's still hope, because I think the Kiel definitely deserve it on balance of the last, let's say, 18 to 24 months. I think they have been the most interesting, most rewarding to watch side in the second division. All that praise being said, I don't really see how they trouble Dortmund too much. Unless, of course, Dortmund still shit the bed against a second division side, which we've seen in the cup so many times. You know, just think back to the almost debacle against Paderborn, and Kiel, as people might deduce from my praise, is a much better side than Paderborn.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I mean, they do have a top scorer whose name is Alexander Mühling, and Lars, I've seen him float in and out of the starting lineup. Do you know why that is? That the guy who
he's the penalty taker.
Ah, okay. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So otherwise,
and they don't have, they don't really have a great scoring striker. I mean, former Dortmund youth player Yannis Serra usually leads that line, and he's more of a, in Germany would say Körperklaus, a bit depreciatively. So he's big and lumbering and good in the air, but not really, too big of a scoring threat. But he did score against Nuremberg, the equalizer on, when was it? Was that Wednesday?
I think it was Tuesday, but I don't know. I honestly don't.
It was Tuesday.
Okay. So yeah, anyway, Finn Bartels in there as well. A player I today already compared to a Max Kruse-ish player. Is in the sense that he is a cheeky player, I think. Very intelligent. Obviously not the fastest player, but he makes a lot of good decisions.
If you're comparing Finn Bartels to Max Kruse, the first thing that comes to my mind is how much of a pace advantage Bartels has, even at his age and after a lot of injuries. So I don't see how you would describe him as not being the fastest, because he's definitely miles faster than Max Kruse.
Yes, but I was basically going for the footballing IQ, even though if I remember the Union Berlin game, Max Kruse was not really anywhere prominently seen, to be honest, against Dortmund. But I digress. I'm just saying that yes, he is faster than Max Kruse, yes, but my point is that he is a smart player, and that's good on Kiel, I guess. And the one player I do not want to see score is Fabian Reese, who is obviously a Schalke youth product, even though I think he was born in Kiel. Matthias, anything else you can contribute on the whole Kiel question, or do you just want to talk me through the Dortmund lineup and who you think will replace Dahoud, because he's obviously suspended for this game after picking up a double yellow against Gladbach in that 1-0 grind that was back in the quarterfinal when all the heat was on Gladbach and Marco Rose and all that stuff.
Well, if you're not going to play Dahoud, I think Bellingham's suspension is only for Bundesliga matches, right?
Correct. It's not like
so obviously,
in the Premier League and DFA where these sort of intersect.
Yeah, so obviously Bellingham's going to start. I think you could make a case for pairing up with Delaney. I mean, you're going to play a 4-3-3 midfield. I mean, you could even then drop Julian Brandt into that central midfield position if you're looking for a bit more of a creative outlet, because whether it's Bellingham or Delaney or John, I mean, they're not exactly the creators necessarily when it comes to passing. They don't compare to Dahoud. So maybe you put Bellingham in that type of, Bellingham in Brandt, maybe in that type of position to replace Dahoud as your more creative central midfielder. But I would definitely start Bellingham. I would ideally start Delaney in a three-man central midfield. Then, it's kind of a toss-up. Do you want to play John in there, or do you want to play Brandt? Because, of course, Mats Hummels is back. So I reckon the back four is going to be the same, except Hummels is playing instead of Emre Can. And then in attacking, I would start with the same four players that played against Wolfsburg. So I'd play Reina, Reus, Sancho, and Holland. I mean, they've had a full week of rest, so you may as well put them out there.
Yeah, I think this would also be my lineup. Lars, any tweaks you would make?
Seems to me like this would be an opportunity to not stretch Lukas Piszczek's legs too much, so I wouldn't be surprised if Morey or indeed Meunier got another chance at right back. And I mean, if we're talking about mentality being key as to not letting Kiel believe that they have a real chance, I don't know that putting on Julian Brandt would be my first move. I could honestly see them introduce Torgan Hazard and playing either Reina or even Reus in a more of a attacking-minded 8 kind of role, because obviously you will have so much possession that whichever players play ahead of the shielding defensive midfielder will basically be attacking players, so might as well just put someone there. And I believe, even though I can't really put my finger on it, that they've experimented with that kind of lineup, be that Reina or Reus in a, on paper, more defensive role.
Yeah, it's a good shout. I don't know why, but I just have a feeling that Haaland will just destroy Kiel, even though it's a home match. But that I think will contribute, at least in theory, should help Dortmund if they're ready to play, to really pick Kiel apart, because Dortmund really have an amazing pitch, and in these sort of games, this can be a big advantage if you utilize it, and especially when Jadon Sancho is back and he's jamming up with Guerrero and whatnot on the left side, then that should be a fun game. I'm really hoping that Dortmund are making this an easy one to watch, and it's not going to be a nail biter or something where they just let a lead slip or something stupid. I just really hope that we'll see a focused performance for 90 minutes, bit like Dortmund showed against Wolfsburg. I thought that was a very good example of them actually doing this. So why not again? But obviously with the cup, there's always the question, do you make a change in goal? Because oftentimes that was where Marvin Hitz got a run out. Now, Matthias, why is it that the dubbed Nullbock Bürki, which Zorc and Terzic were not too happy about, why is it that he is not getting the nod for the cup match to maybe redeem himself or, play his final game as a Dortmund keeper if it comes to that, which we may talk about in a second?
I'll be honest, I don't know. I mean, I haven't made it a big mystery, my opinion of Bürki versus Hitz. So I don't understand it. I mean, there were a few questions on Twitter today about it. And I said, it must be something offside the pitch, because if you're looking at the play on the pitch, it's hard for me personally. And obviously there are people that'll disagree, and that's totally legit. To me, Bürki's the better keeper than Marvin Hitz. And so I don't understand it unless it's something off the pitch, unless it's a decision we want to move on from Bürki, we want to sell him. And so there's some kind of an issue there, personality clash wise, because under Favre, Bürki was pretty much always starting. And then Terzic comes in, a less experienced coach, and he makes that change, which is a big call. A goalkeeper change is a big call. And so I don't understand it because I'm not in the locker room. Obviously, Terzic and Zorc reacted quite annoyed by the headline that Roman Bürki isn't really practicing well. He's not in the mood anymore. And, there were reports that Dortmund are willing to sell him for just 5 million euros. So I don't know. I personally don't understand the situation because I'm also not in the locker room, and I feel like there's something there that's determining this beyond versus who's the better goalkeeper. Because for me personally, there's no question that Bürki is a better keeper than Marvin Hitz.
Yeah, Lars, what are you making of this situation? And maybe if you want to add to this, Dortmund have been in recent days been heavily linked with Stuttgart's Kobel. Do you think that he's a better keeper than Roman Bürki, and that would make a good transfer?
Yes, but I'll get back to that. I do agree that it's quite peculiar, the entire situation with Bürki and Hitz, and I would say that Lucien Favre definitely has some quote-unquote blood on his hands, because he opened Pandora's box in late autumn or whenever that was, when he made a switch but never committed to anything, and it was all up in the air. And I think we've all seen how reliant Bürki, even more so than most goalkeepers, is on his psyche and confidence in his own abilities, which I don't think there's much of a debate that, on paper, Bürki is the quite significantly better or more talented goalkeeper than Marvin Hitz. But I do believe that one can easily make the argument that while Bürki's performances definitely made way for a coach's decision to switch goalkeepers to Hitz, just for the sake of not having this level of regular incompetence that Bürki showed at the time. While that was the case that back then, I don't think that Hitz has necessarily made the same, amount and level of blunder all the time. At the same time, I do believe that Hitz has made enough mistakes for Bürki to get a chance to win his spot back. But seeing that he hasn't, there's either something off the field, I can buy Matthias's theory, or he's just not practicing well. I mean, that's something that's at least in the realm of possibility, in my opinion. So I think what they like about Hitz is he's a bit more confident with the feet, and he's definitely a better communicator. which obviously we can now judge much better, seeing as sadly there's still no fans, and you can basically hear his every command, and you could hear Bürki's commands, which were fewer and far between. And I think that's also kind of a segue to what they would like in Kobel, because he's also better than Bürki with the ball at his feet. And he's a great communicator in that Stuttgart backline. He bellows his commands really quite intensely. I mean, obviously, volume is not the most important factor in that, but certainly something that catches your attention these days anyway. For me, it is anyway. And yeah, I mean, he's being considered, if he stays at Stuttgart, to be their next captain, because obviously former Dortmund player Gonzalo Castro is not getting a new contract, and I think goalkeepers being captains does have more tradition than recent examples in the Bundesliga anyway. I don't know that many of these decisions for goalkeepers have gone that well. Just look at Schalke's Alexander Nübel debacle, and from a pure goalkeeping perspective, I think Kobel probably isn't as good as someone like Peter Gulaschi, who Dortmund also have been regularly linked with, but the entire package, including, age and potential going forward, is definitely something I could get behind. I have heard, and I mean, it's been reported all over anyway, that Dortmund are really quite intensively trying to sign Kobel, but I don't know that they have the kind of money lying around, especially if they happen to not make the Champions League, to invest what, according to reports, will amount to a transfer fee north of 15 or 16 million euros in a goalkeeper in a non-Champions League season. So while I would definitely approve of signing Kobel, I don't think that it's feasible without Bürki leaving in the first place, and I don't see how he has any kind of market. And without Champions League money, it really becomes a proposition that's hard to fathom from a Dortmund perspective.
Yeah, but if that happens, Matthias, I feel like there's going to be a cleanup on aisle 1, because then if, say, Dortmund cannot get a feasible replacement for Bürki, and you can't just buy another goalkeeper. It needs to be of a certain standard, obviously. Otherwise, this entire thing does not make sense. So, how do you patch this thing back together if Dortmund indeed are fiscally impotent to buy a new goalkeeper?
Well, thankfully, there's a new coach coming into town, and new coaches bring a fresh wind with them, and changes and new opportunities and new evaluations for everybody in the squad. So it's like it's a reset for a lot of the players that are going to be staying around, that they have the opportunity to kind of start fresh again. And so if Marco Rose wasn't coming in, if, say, Edin Terzic, they would have said, you're going to be our coach for next season, then you're in a completely untenable situation. As it is right now, I don't think you are, because you're getting a new coaching staff coming in and a new head coach coming in. So if they're not able to make this happen, which I just find it funny that apparently only Swiss keepers can play for Borussia Dortmund anymore these days. Even though that makes me happy, of course, I feel that it's not all lost, because the bridges aren't burnt in that sense, because you have new eyes on the situation and maybe a new approach, that if Bürki does stay and they don't bring in a new keeper, that maybe the new approach can help rebuild some of that and rebuild some of his confidence, because I agree 100% with Lars that Bürki is definitely a confidence keeper. He's a head keeper, like a lot of keepers are. It's confidence is a big thing. When he had confidence in the last few years with his backline, he was one of the best keepers in the Bundesliga. He made very few mistakes. If you think back to the season of the two Peters, there were a lot of issues there. There were a lot of issues in rotation in the backline, and he forced himself and made a lot of mistakes. And you can kind of see the same thing this season. So that's kind of my take on that. If he does stick around, new coaching staff, it's not the end of the world. But obviously, for all parties, I think it's probably best to kind of move on at this point.
Yeah.
I have a short rebuttal, if you will.
Sure.
it is a new coaching staff, but like most Bundesliga sides, I don't know about other leagues, Dortmund are not going to change goalkeeper coaches. And
yeah, it's a good point.
Usually head coaches kind of trust the evaluation of the goalkeeper coach, and obviously in Dortmund it's Matthias Kleinsteiber, who's been involved with Birki and Hitz for years now, so I would not necessarily assume that a new head coach makes too much of a difference in that specific position, but obviously ultimately the call goes to Marco Rose, and I mean, obviously if they can't sign a replacement, they're not going to let Roman Bürki go in the first place, because there's no possible situation where they end up with Marvin Hitz as their default number one and Luca Unbehauen or Stefan Driljatza as the number two.
So that's how it's pronounced.
I'm assuming. So if that happens to be the case, then for sure Bürki is going to get a shot at winning back his job. But I think Matthias put it best that for all sides involved, it would be best if Bürki found another opportunity for himself and Dortmund got a fresh start. And if that's the case, then I think Kobel, as I said, from an age perspective, also potential and all that makes the most sense out of the plethora of rumors that we've gotten over the last, I mean, what is it now, 6 months or so?
Yeah, a million rumors. But yeah, if you hadn't said it, I would have said it myself. I feel like Dortmund maybe need a goalkeeper coach who has indoctrinated the art of leaving the line. I think we can leave it here, especially since Lars' power nap time is coming up, but not without a prediction for the cup match. So, Lars, why don't you go first?
Since it's Dortmund against a second division side in this year's cup season, it's going to be a bit more of a nail-biter than you, Stefan, wanted, but ultimately it's going to be a 3-1 win for Dortmund. And I don't know, Berlin final shirts without fans in the stands would be kind of corny, right?
Totally, but you have to make the best out of it. Matthias, what's your prediction?
I'm going to go with the same goal difference, but a different score line. I think Dortmund are going to have another clean sheet and win this one 2-0.
Okay, you kind of took the suspense out of it once you mentioned clean sheet, but fair enough, Matthias. My wife just texted me, quote, "I think I outdid myself with dinner tonight." So that's certainly my cue. So I'm predicting a 5-0 win because how else am I going to jinx this if I'm going to maintain any influence? This is the only way I can. So that all being said, I thank you both for coming on. You can find Lars at Lars Pormann on Twitter. You can find Matthias at Matthias Zug on Twitter. You can find me at Stefan Butzko on Twitter. And all of us at Yellowwallpod on Twitter and Facebook. If you want to subscribe to the show, please do that via YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, etc. And if you want to support us financially, please go to patreon.com/theyellowwall. And we shall be back with a preview of the Leipzig game and obviously a review of how Dortmund moved to the German Cup final. Until then, as always, thank you for listening and goodbye.